Good, Mark. How you doing?
Good.
You look like you're in a prison cell.
I think we're live. Yeah, this is a hotel room I'm in. In fact, you're probably gonna see my wife come through the door shortly. This is my first hotel since whole lockdown. I'm back in Auckland for the couple of days, and she's going into her office as they're slightly opening, letting a few people in at a time over the coming weeks. So yeah, I thought I'd do a few sessions from Auckland now.
So Auckland's a pretty hopping spot, right, in New Zealand? I mean, that's one of the more metropolitan areas.
Man, you're overselling it already.
Well.
Auckland is the largest city in New Zealand.
Right. So, but you've been living out in a field.
Yeah. So you think it's the largest city, and it's got about, I don't know, maybe 1.5 million people. That's our largest city.
Yeah, still compared to
it's like a suburb in Sydney or London.
Hey, Danny. Yeah, everybody else say hello.
We've got a few other people on. I haven't got my dual screen, so I can't see anyone. Danny's there with us.
Yeah, sorry about the last couple of weeks, folks. Completely my fault, but we're back, and we got a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk about. A bunch of stuff's happened in the meantime, which is kind of a good thing.
Thomas, Debbie, John, excellent. Great to have you all on the show. We've got a few things to cover. We've had a lot of people either fill out the online form and leave us questions that they want us to cover on air. We've had a few people send us emails. Hey, Greg, about what they want us to, or ideas or questions that they've had or information. Hey, Andrew, how are you? That they want us to discuss. So, but of course, we've started a new financial year. So the clock's ticked over. We're in FY21 now.
Yeah, well, for Microsoft we are. And something else happened here on July 1, right?
What's that?
The MVPs were announced, renewed.
Oh, you're still an MVP.
I am. But I think I might be the only one who didn't go tell everybody that I was renewed.
Yep, I didn't either.
It just started looking a little redundant out there.
Yeah. I didn't do a post on LinkedIn. I did one post on Twitter before it was announced who had got their MVP, and I just said, thank you. And
before you knew?
No, I did know.
Oh, okay.
So this is the thing, is that I was able, let's say before the email and everything came out, I was able through the portal to find out that I was renewed.
Gotcha.
Just a little process.
Anecdotal evidence, eh?
A little process of refresh the cache, literally, and yeah, was able to find out that sign my NDA again, very seamlessly. Got my MVP through again, which I know you did. I think we only had 2 people that I know of dropped off out of the program in this round for us, right?
Larry Lentz, right?
Yep. 14 years MVP, so you've done a long innings.
Yeah, 14 years. The guy did a hell of a job for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And who was the other one that got dropped?
Stephen Smith, was it?
Oh, Stephen Smith. And he wasn't even in very long. He
was in 1 year, as far as I know.
1 year.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what it goes to show. And I think people out there have kind of thought this is one of those things that once you get it, it's easy to hang on to.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, you got to earn that thing every year. And there's an example of a guy who did something to get it and then didn't follow up.
Yeah.
There's no like honeymoon. It's not like you get your first 3 years on your first effort. You get looked at every year all over again if you haven't done anything. So when you think about a guy like Larry Lenz, 14 years of doing things that were judged every year as being valuable enough to get renewed. That's saying something.
Yeah.
This is only my 4th.
I think mine was my 9th.
I can't imagine another 10 years of contributing content at the level that either of us have been.
Well, that's the thing. I think the whole program has changed massively from the 9 years ago, 2012, January 2012, I was awarded. And I don't think if I was being awarded today, I would be awarded based on the today's requirements.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, yet you were a week ago.
I was what?
You mean what got you in the first place? That's what you're doing today?
Yeah, wouldn't get me in now.
Gotcha.
And so what I'm saying is that, hey, Patty, Ken, welcome. We'll get to your app source question. But so what I think it is the bar to get in today is so much higher, and the bar to stay in is so much higher than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So much higher. And the reason is that because it is now the title of MVP, I think, is so sought after. You know, I remember having on my podcast about a year ago, a CEO, founder of one of the largest GSIs around the world, out of Hungary. No, he wasn't from Hungary. He was from, what's that country between Amsterdam and France?
You're asking an American. We don't know anything about geography.
Oh, what's it called? Between anybody on the call, who knows between the country between Amsterdam and France? Belgium, that's the country. My wife.
Or you could just ask your wife.
Yeah. And so superfluous fact. But what was interesting is that he was proactively seeking to hire MVPs into his organization. Yeah, Belgium is what it definitely is. Hire MVPs in because he could see the value that they brought to his business. And so when he was engaging with his recruiters, one of his criteria, was, can we get MVPs into these roles?
Yeah, we've seen some organizations do that. Hitachi certainly has.
Yeah.
Well, they've groomed some of their own, but they brought on some. They definitely have understood some. But I think the value is there's an assumption based on that when they're hiring somebody, but also, if you're out there marketing your business and services, provided you play that up. Because I've had other people say, customers don't give a shit whether you're MVP or not. And it's, well, they don't unless you tell them.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as people saying customers don't care if you're gold or not. Well, they do if you tell them.
Yeah.
It's got to be part of your sales pitch to make sure they understand, why they should give a shit about these things that you may have that someone else doesn't.
Yeah.
Part of that process.
I've been in companies where I've been rolled out in boardroom presentations to C-level suite. So C-suite and said, here's Mark Smith, he's an MVP. And of course, you look at these guys that hear that in these C-level and their eyes glaze over. Here's another 3-letter acronym from Microsoft. So what does it mean? And so I would always go, well, just before we get underway, let me explain what an MVP is and why you should care. Because one of the things that we would do is that, very rarely when you're bidding in multi-million-dollar projects, right? Most of our projects that we were doing at the time were $800,000 plus projects, right? Into the multi-millions. They are all competitive. None of them, nobody signs that type of money off without getting at least 2 other quotes. Sure. Nobody's policy allows that. So they are always competitive at that level of game. And so you're always trying to pull, what's your point of difference? And, before we came on here, one of the questions that we've had from the audience is around how do you sell?
Yeah.
And so in this scenario, what I would do is say, listen, so let me explain what a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional means and how it will benefit your business, because I knew that this was going to be a point of difference against the 2 other quotes or companies that they're going to come and have them present. I would say what an MVP is, we sit with the product team. We engage with the product team around what's coming in the next 18 months. And what that'll mean, Mr. Customer, is I'm not going to build or specify or architect anything in your solution that I know Microsoft's going to provide out of the box in the next 18 months.
Or deprecate.
Right? Or deprecate. So that's going to save you money. It's going to mean that you're going to have your solution aligned with Microsoft so you can maximize return on your licensing. And so that was really the line I would take. I wouldn't go, it means that I'm, writing 15 blog posts an hour and, being consulted to by Microsoft and all. No, they're not interested in that. When you're selling, the customer only wants to know the benefits that are in it for them. So my slice that I would give them of why MVP was that, hey, I see the product roadmap 18 months ahead, roundabout. I'm engaged with the product team. If something fails, we've got a path right into the people that created this feature or function within the application. And therefore, you're going to benefit from my engagement with that. I would never go, I'm going to tell you NDA content or anything like that. But if they were wanting to do something, they would then have the trust in me. If I said, we probably just should wait on that area, they're not going to go to me, no, let's override it. Because they're going, hey, you probably know something that you can't say that you're saying, we trust you. We're not
I think that's an excellent example of creating an unfair advantage, which sales is all about creating an unfair advantage for yourself. My dad told me when I was a kid, first got started, he said, screw fair. He said, you can't sell and be fair. Don't worry about being fair, because the name of the game is to get the work, and that's just how capitalist markets work. You have to get the work, and don't worry about the other guy. So certainly you can lie to people is one way to be unfair, but then that's going to come back and bite you. That does every salesperson who's ever used that as a strategy. But creating some kind of an unfair advantage, you just identified one that frankly not a lot of people would be able to use. I'm an MVP, and it gives me this unfair advantage of this knowledge.
Yeah.
I think that for lots of folks out there that are selling every day, they don't have that particular unfair advantage they can bring to the table. They got to kind of go find their own, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I've always been very good at listening. I will, I've had, mutual associates of ours sitting on calls where I'm talking to customers in a sales scenario, and at the end of the call, they're like, I'm surprised you're not asking tons of questions. Or I'm surprised that you're asking questions instead of just telling them the answer.
Yeah.
And I've always found that, if you ask enough questions, the solution ultimately will present itself. And it's easier today, because back when we only had dynamic CRM online, it didn't matter what their problem was. That's what we were going to try and sell them.
Yeah.
But today, we got multiple apps within that family. We got PowerApps. We got platform. We got a whole shit ton of stuff that we can bring into the mix. So you kind of need to ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, after you've been hearing a lot of these questions, you start making some suggestions here and there. And the real goal is to have them come up with the idea. I mean, they're the ones saying, you know what, I think because you don't just say, I think you should do PowerApps. You're like, well, you could do PowerApps and it would be this, that, or the other. Or you could go, with this app and it would be, kind of throw out some scenarios. And ultimately, they're the ones that are coming back, say, you know what, we want to do PowerApps.
Yeah.
Or we want to do this app. And they came in the phone call not having any idea what they even wanted to buy.
Yeah.
So yes, I've been getting a little sun. It was Independence Day this past weekend, and I spent it at the beach. And you can definitely see where my sunglasses were. pretty clearly see where my sunglasses were.
So obviously you're getting out. How's the old COVID business in the US going for you guys?
For me or for the US? Because I think for the US, they're pretty fucked.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at a map. I think it was Nick Dolman.
I saw that one, yeah.
Posted this COVID map of the reason why Canada doesn't want to open their border. And here you see Canada's just a couple little red spots here and there. And here's the US's big bloody red continent, right on its border. So I can totally understand why they're keeping the doors locked.
Yeah.
I think that Americans are Americans, right? They're like, nobody's going to tell me what to do, and so they just run around like assholes doing stupid shit. Um, Brad Smith, yeah, I don't know, Brad Smith. Uh, Brad Smith. He'd be Did you ever talk to Brad Smith?
No, I would love to.
He'd be an interesting one, but I have a feeling he's way too smart for that.
Yeah.
He
See,
would not.
I read his book last year, which is, oh, you're frozen, mate. I don't know why he's frozen there. I read his book last year, and incredible guy.
He would not be a guy.
There, mate.
I've been hearing you, but it says my internet is unstable. Hopefully it'll pop back.
Yeah. So yeah, what was interesting, one of the things that's caught my attention, because he's been in conversations I've had over the last 2 weeks now, is that he covers in his book a thing called TV Whitespace, TVWS, which is a technology that Microsoft have spent about 10 years researching now, which is when TV went digital, cable, all that kind of stuff, they used to own the spectrum from, I don't know, whenever TV came out, and it was at 1940s, 50s, or whenever. And the broadcast, part of the broadcast spectrum they chose was this part of the spectrum back then that had the biggest ability to throw the longest distance. So basically with this technology, you can create a Wi-Fi hotspot with a 10-kilometer radius that doesn't care about trees or objects in the way. It still kind of gets through. And with low latency, high data throughputs, and it's all based on a GPS-driven database, centrally owned by whoever the local authority is, government agency, that type of thing, that allows you to grab the spectrum and use it for internet access. And so the problem is that fiber is too expensive outside of a main center.
Yeah, right.
So too expensive. And so this addresses that. And a lot of governments are making the spectrum free. So therefore allowing, it's considered a natural resource. Therefore, you've got to get legislation in place in a country. Now, Brad Smith came to New Zealand last year when we had the Christchurch shooting in the mosque where some guy went on some rampage. One of our, the biggest, shoot up we've ever had in our history. Our gun laws were changed straight after it all. Semi-automatic, automatic weapons were banned. And that happened within weeks of that knob doing that. But Brad Smith in his book, and I had no idea at the time, it was never mentioned in the news or public. In his book, he flew to New Zealand to the Prime Minister and said, how can we help? Here I have all the resources of Microsoft, legal resources, etc. I remember being in a conference in Toronto with Brad Smith, and he was on stage, and he said if Microsoft was a law firm, it would be the largest law firm in the world based on the number of lawyers they have on staff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it gives you the idea of the capacity outside of the software, etc., that Microsoft has. And so, yeah, I'm going to see what I can do about getting this tech into New Zealand and opened up. So I'm probably going to engage with the government, see what legislation we have to do. I've got to shortly have a meeting with the CTO of Microsoft in New Zealand, see where it stands, bring a couple of groups together. Because I think that unless the internet is ubiquitous, right, is everywhere for everybody, the playing field for new ideas, for education, for particularly new business ventures, right? One of the guys I got coming on the show in the future, his job at Microsoft is to see where this TV Whitespace is rolled out, how PowerApps and stuff get implemented in places like Africa where it has already been turned on. And you're getting these kids in school and stuff that, they jump on the internet for the first time and they, let's say, they get a video stream of, New York City, and it just blows their mind. They got no concept of the rest of the world and where it is and what's available and stuff. And so you bring up everybody's education when you provide access, and so, Yeah, I think some
I
opportunity.
would assume that Spectrum has currently been under long-term contracts with the broadcast
Yep.
industry who bought it cheap for long-term, maybe lifetime contracts way back
Yeah.
in the day. So there's going to be some litigation going, I would imagine.
Well, no. So the way the whole stuff works is it grabs white space, which is the space between two owned parts of the spectrum. So let's say one of your telcos owns one part of the spectrum and the next one next to it. They always would create a buffer so you didn't get crossover, on the signal. Now,
Yeah.
because technology with GPS is advanced so much, based on your specific location with your device, they can go, hey, this part of the spectrum is wide open. Nobody's using it at all.
Just slide right through the middle.
That's it. So it doesn't interfere or doesn't cause static or noise on anybody else's connection. And let's say your parameter changes or whatever, traffic comes across, because, military own a whole bunch of these spectrums and stuff as well.
Yeah.
It automatically switches and takes another piece of white space around you. So it really becomes infinite in the possibility, as in you can never get theoretically crosstalk or crossover. So degradation of signal.
Yeah. So what Frank was referencing Brad Smith about, which I did read this article where he was talking about Apple taking a percentage on all these apps and these poor app people, and Apple, kind of crushing the market with their percent take on top of all this stuff. And there is some irony there with the ISV Connect program doing essentially the exact same thing.
Yeah.
As Apple, and Apple doing things like blocking side loading or voiding warranties of side loading and things like that, and potentially could have something similar from Microsoft. We already had them talking at one time about if there's apps that are side loaded, we're going to send up a admin alert to the administrator that, hey, you've got unsanctioned apps in your environment, which is the equivalent of jailbreaking, I guess. I haven't seen that move forward. I think some of these may have been some. I think for the very short term here, the whole ISV story is going to be quiet, because Googs, was kind of the iron fist guy of how that all was going to happen. Very specific, very this is my way or the highway, and he's moving on.
He's gone.
Yeah, and we've got new people coming in that are going to be looking at some of the things that he was pretty ham-handed about and say, yeah, that we'll continue that, we'll drop that. So I think whenever you get a new head into anything, I mean, look what happened to the whole business applications group when Phillips came in from Jujar. They got their own ideas. A lot of the old ideas are they're going to get swept away, and new ideas. So we'll see.
We got sent an email from one of the people that listen to the show. I'll just read it to you because it's around this area of ISV Connect and their payment of these fees is slicing, what's talked about here. And the email from the ISV Connect program alias said, hello, please find attached the following Microsoft invoice for ISV Connect activity, the 15th of June, 2020. The ISV Connect is calculated based on your reported deal registration information and the program's terms, which is a link to it. Generally, an invoice is provided every 90 days for each ongoing agreement. Please remit the applicable amounts by the due date of each invoice. And this individual said, so then that's the email he forwarded me. He said, I won't say his name, was listening to the show last night. Love it as always. Typically, I decide to report. So topically, he said, I decided to report a sale via Partner Center to see what would happen. Here's the invoice. 10% of the sale wasn't much, so I thought it was worth paying to see what the process was. I thought it would be easier for them to somehow add it to the CPS monthly billing. And so I got a copy of the invoice here, just covering his details. And so there's, a full invoice from Microsoft with, in this case, a small amount of money based on his reported sales through AppSource.
Well, we talked about those emails that had come out last month, basically to ISVs in the program that had signed up for Connect saying, hey, we haven't seen you report any sales. Please respond with your sales. So now we know what happens when you do it. Triggers an invoice from Microsoft for their cut of those those sales, which isn't surprising. It isn't surprising they would do that. And I don't know where else they could do it. I don't know if they could put it into CSP or not. I mean, not every ISV is a CSP, so I don't know how that would even work. Are they just sending it straight out of, Microsoft vendor
Yeah.
stuff? Probably all the ISVs and Connect. When you become Connect, you're probably set up as a vendor. I guess you must be, so they can bill you.
Yep. So, well, there it is. I know you haven't seen one of those invoices.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah. Nothing to report here. Nothing to report here.
Nothing to report just yet. I want to see. Well, so he wanted to see what happens when you report something, and now he knows.
Exactly.
I want to see what happens when you don't.
Yeah.
So it's really just a test.
It's research, right?
It's just research. As soon as they pop up, of course, that'll be a different story. But I want to see what happens when they pop up.
We got another email here from Mark Woolnick, and he was talking around onboarding experience of PowerApps. He decided to go through the process as an individual that knew nothing. Of course, he does know a heck of a lot about the tech, and he was just saying that he didn't feel that it was really citizen developer ready, whether that be the PowerApps portal, whether that be PowerApps in general, Canvas model driven. He says from a newbie perspective, it definitely wasn't a friction-free experience.
And I think he has a developer background. So for him to try and pretend to put on the newbie hat and feel like this was more complicated than it should be, I mean, you and I are both closer to the actual citizen developer level of skill when it comes to development stuff. And yeah, I don't think any of this stuff is what I would consider citizen developer. I think Microsoft they have an interesting perspective on the outside world from where they sit. Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier about how they, when you look at the sales app, they made a bunch of assumptions about what a business wants in a way of a sales app, right? Everybody has to start with a lead.
Yeah.
You're obviously selling a thing to an end customer. That customer is most likely a business. There are lots of assumptions they make about that, but I think they also make a lot of assumptions about the users of their software. Mm-hmm. I know they got metrics and analytics and stuff like that should be able to help inform, but their idea of the citizen developer, I mean, I don't know who that composite person is.
Yeah, the persona there.
But it certainly isn't. And I mean, you watch like Ryan Cunningham or one of these guys do the demo of building a Canvas app in 5 minutes, and yeah, it looks easy.
Yeah.
But then if you go back and watch it in slow motion, then you see where he dropped this complicated formula in the top bar and breezed right past it. And wait a minute, that was stop citizen cold step one.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even step one. They still got to get to the point where he's even sitting there trying to create something. And I think that was part of the point that Mark was also making, just the whole onboarding process. If you know nothing and you just go to Microsoft.com and try and find out how to even get to a point where you could even try and build an app, is a daunting task just to get to the point to then ultimately not be able to build it anyway, because it's not really citizen friendly.
Well, I've come across two times, two individuals. One was Keith Watling, and and I'll just talk about Keith for a second here. Keith, in his scenario, he was working, might have been in SharePoint or something, and he saw a button that said, build an app or something like that on the top right corner from his data. And that was his first exposure to PowerApps. I wouldn't say that he was a full-on citizen developer because he has a high degree of technical skill, but that was his onboarding experience, which, on the surface of it seems a very smooth experience.
Well, it is. That's actually one of those gateway drug experiences. If you open SharePoint, online, looking at a library, any list in SharePoint Online, there's a button up top says create a Power App. And Microsoft has done all the plumbing in the background to spin up this little Power App of your list with the ability to add, delete, edit, and a basic little Power App.
Yeah.
So if that's all you want to do, you don't have to do anything. You push the button and Microsoft does it for you. It doesn't get much easier than that. But as soon as you want to try and to build that yourself,
Yeah.
at that stage where Keith was at, he probably couldn't have built it himself.
Yeah. But it's an example of the ability for people to jump in. That seemed friction free. The other one was Lauren Taylor, and I did a podcast with her that just went live this week. And she's an elementary principal in Seattle, Tacoma area. And once again, she's built out a whole bunch of apps to run the school now. Very interesting. But a non-technical person that started off with Power Automate, automating a few of her daily activities, which were just overly cumbersome. That then, she got on a support call trying to do something with a Microsoft support person that said, hey, you should try PowerApps. And she was like, well, I don't want to do something else. And before she knew it, she had clicked the button for PowerApps when she saw it there after mentioning it. And she had built out a Power App, embedded it in Teams, rolled it out to her school, and saving everybody hours and hours of time. Once again, non-technical person, she's an educator. But I would say that's relatively friction-free as examples of people being able to pick it up and get going. I think if you went deliberately to the website, PowerApps website, and said, I'm going to start from there, maybe not the best experience.
Yeah. I wrote a post earlier today about, I kind of concluded it with repeating your refrain from a while back that Dynamics 365 dead.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm looking at what they're doing with these first-party apps, and I'm looking at what they're doing with PowerApps. And to your point, when they demo PowerApps or talk about PowerApps, they're very excited about it. I mean, it's a very hot technology. They're very excited. But then whenever they show you anything or do anything, it's always this very small problem they're solving.
Yeah.
They don't show you an example of solving significant, big, complex process challenges with PowerApps. They show you solving small problems. And then imagine yourself solving 100 little problems like this. That seems to be kind of where they're positioned.
Yeah.
But we know, particularly on the CDS side, that that model-driven Power App is the same damn thing as all of their Dynamics customer engagement apps are built on.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, there's nothing keeping you from building all the same power if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Of course, you never would, because when I look at the first-party apps, again, I don't know who the composite customer is they've designed this for, but I've never met that customer. I've never even met a customer close to that.
Yeah.
That needs any of that stuff. So we're leaning pretty heavy into pushing everybody straight to PowerApps. I mean, my value today in the enterprise sales app is to show a customer why they don't want it and why instead we should just do a Power App.
Yeah.
But I'm a little concerned, and you mentioned it before, that the $10 SKU has got a lot of appeal, obviously, to people. But it seems like every time I turn around, they're clarifying something that I thought I had a clear understanding of before, but now the clarification is coming down the opposite way.
Yeah, they're tightening the definition.
Yeah, I think they're starting to tighten the noose a little bit there without overtly doing it. They're just kind of through clarification now. For example, Carissa, another MVP, was recently trying to understand if the Outlook app, the app for Outlook,
Yep.
counts as a model-driven app. Does that count as one of your 2 model-driven apps?
Yeah.
Well, I had been told, I might even have it recorded on one of the episodes from back when, that no, we don't consider that an app. Of course, I was also told that you can have 2 apps, one model and one canvas.
Yeah.
Well, that got clarified more recently that you can have 2 of any kind. You can have 2 model, 2 canvas, 1 of each. Doesn't have to be 1 model, 1 canvas. You could have 2 model-driven apps.
Yep.
Okay, well, that was interesting news. But then the clarification she got back from her string with them after a bunch of MVPs jumping in saying, yeah, you can do that. No problem. No problem. It doesn't count. It was Ryan Cunningham saying, oh, no, that does count. Yep, that is one of your apps.
Wow.
So wait a minute. Now we're looking at, for this $10 pass, where I had been assuming we could have a model-driven app, and of course the Outlook capability with that, the Outlook added with that, and then a Canvas app for some other purpose that would be. I actually can now only, I got to pick two of those three. I can't have all three of those because they're saying that Outlook app is indeed its own model-driven app. So good on her for plowing through the know-it-all MVPs, giving her, our opinions and getting straight from Microsoft ultimately a clarification. But that clarification, again, every time they're clarifying something about that low-cost license, it's going against the value of that license.
Yeah, but the thing is, the people that often push for these clarifications are salespeople, right? So they're always, as in I'm talking about, they're pushing the clarification from a Microsoft salesperson who's always going to be sell more licenses, right? And so therefore, it is going to, I remember the best bit of advice I got from the senior representative at Microsoft in Australia about 10 plus years ago. And he said, if you ask me a question on licensing, I need to go and find out the exact, if you as a Microsoft partner can't see that it's clear, but you ask me for clarification, I have to tell you an answer that I have to then enforce. In other words, don't ask me questions.
Yeah, right.
Because if you're ever audited, you can go, well, I didn't know this is the way I read it, and you've got a defensible position. But if you are going to ask me to clarify, I'm going to have to find an answer that you might not like. And then that is enforceable.
Well, and I mean, let's face it, the Microsoft sellers live and die by the scorecard, right?
Yeah.
The scorecard, for anybody who doesn't know, is basically they get a list I think it's updated every quarter of their priorities of what they're supposed to be going and driving sales around, and they get ranked and they got quotas, and if you don't make your numbers at Microsoft, you're out.
Yeah.
I mean, my understanding for most people is the numbers aren't super difficult to make, but if you don't make them, you're out. But you don't really make any money unless you're blowing way past these numbers. So you got a sales force there at Microsoft that is motivated to sell the most of the most expensive.
Yeah.
More than you need of more than you need to every customer. I mean, that's the logical motivation. Now, morally, is that the right thing to do? Ethically, is that the right thing to do? Those are other things. But logically, they make the most money by selling customers way more than they need.
Yeah.
All the time.
Money is a motivator. Just answering a few questions we've got in chat there. Andrew Jamison, I've gone down that pathway of WordPress and Azure. I had a multi WordPress site. I'd never do it again. Azure is not designed for that. Now, don't shoot me. Yes, you can do it. Doesn't mean it's the best way. No, go and find a hosting provider that'll charge you a cup of coffee a month for hosting. Is much better than trying to put a WordPress website on Azure. I did
the exact same thing. It was
I
up there
burned
for
hours and hours and hours of absolutely wasted time trying to host on and fees because the database technology is not Microsoft that underpins it. A third party then charges you fees once your database grows. Never again would I do that. Amanda says there is talking about Amazon Honeycode, of course, which has been announced in the last 2 weeks. I don't know if you've shot over there and had a look at it. It's their low-code, no-code app development solution, which is, it looks like it's designed to be, compete head-to-head with the PowerApps story. Of course, they're early on in their journey, so, Microsoft has a jump from a maturity level. But, I mean, if you look at Gartner, Mendex is...
Oh, you know what? You say that they have a jump in the maturity level, but Amazon is building this thing from scratch.
Yeah, valid.
Microsoft built everything we're looking at from existing technologies they had to refactor and dismantle. So I don't know that necessarily that head start gives them ultimately an advantage because they were forced to do a lot of the things we're now calling citizen developer processes by history and legacy that they had to work with,
Yeah.
starting with a clean slate. I mean, you could potentially build something that actually is citizen developer probably faster.
Yeah.
As far as them having aggressive pricing, I haven't seen the pricing. I know it's early days for them, but I hope it's aggressive as shit because
it'll make us a lot more competitive.
well, it'll cause Microsoft to maybe have to loosen some of the reins. There's already been talk amongst MVPs about ultimately that this is a platform. This is going to be a platform business. This business applications group is going to be a platform model. It's not going to be apps from Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see. I mean, you predicted that first and earliest, but the Dynamics is dead.
Yeah.
But there still definitely seems to be some protectionist mentality. I think that it's funny. I remember when they first moved to cloud, Office 365 and all that stuff, and I was in Pack back then and going, that was big Pack. And the challenge they had at the time were all these on-premise partners, right? That couldn't figure out the financial model to move to lower revenue, right? They're making all this money up front and all these fees. Now it's going to suddenly drop into this monthly rev. So there's going to be this revenue cliff, really, for most of them, that they were going to have to survive this trough of a loss of revenue and then make it up over time on the other side. And I remember Microsoft sitting up there just almost flippant about, well, you're just going to have to do it. It's the future. That's where we're going. That's what the company's going to be. You're just going to have to take it in the ass and move on. And now here we sit with, I feel, almost the same thing, that ultimately this is going to be a platform company, and their first party apps are paying the bills right now is the problem.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to let PowerApps flourish to the degree that it could. As long as it doesn't interfere with their first party, they're fine. That's why they keep talking about, hey, solve every little problem you can with the Power App. But they're not going to allow us to solve big problems with that because that's just going to cannibalize that licensing. But they're in the same boat their partners were. If you're going to be a platform company, you need to open that thing up and let people build whatever the fuck they want on it.
Yeah. So here's something a little interesting. Can you see that?
Ah, yes, Honest MVP.
Honest MVP was a Twitter account that's been going for well over a year that's been shut down.
Yeah.
And I think there's another Twitter account that might have baited you a few times that's also been shut down.
The Power Pterodactyl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Notice these accounts are gone. These overnight, which the overnight happened to be the first of this month, these accounts have been closed down.
So I think somebody was clarifying that, and I don't know if it's new or if it was a new thing that became part of the MVP, or if people just actually went and read the whole
No,
details.
it's a new thing. It's a new clause.
So a new clause in your MVP agreement that you're not allowed to go out there under any fake profiles or stuff like that. So it looks like right up to the 11th hour before that new rule kicked in, and then those two both dropped off. Like, okay, and I think it was they also made it for employees too, right?
I don't know. Something obviously happened because one of those accounts, of course, was something like that, and that's disappeared as well. So interesting times. Obviously, it wasn't seen as. It was another MVP that run the Honest MVP account in our community. And just as a humor, it says there, he's the original MS Paint MVP, which of course there's no such thing as an MS Paint MVP.
It was good fun. He poked fun at MVPs for basically being an arrogant bunch of jerks. And, sometimes you got to make fun of yourself, and that's what that account was doing. So I never really had a problem with it. I got a little nervous about it because I thought when it first came up, I thought it was pretty controversial. Yeah. And I actually followed it, and then I thought about that, and I said, "Ooh, I better unfollow this because I wouldn't want to get kicked out of the program for following this guy or something." You know what I mean? Look like I'm supporting, whoever it is. But as time went by, you could see he was really just poking fun, you know.
Totally. And you would have seen in the back channel that I was the first person that identified who he truly was by
You
his
did, and I
messaging.
remember you sharing that with me sometime back and thinking to myself, no way,
Yeah.
no way, it can't be, because everybody was speculating who it was. I know he's gone public with all of us. Has he gone public? Do you
I
know?
don't know if he's made any announcement out in the public domain, so I'm not going to out him here.
Yeah, we won't out him here.
Yeah, I just noticed also some little tweaks going on in the MVP program. They've merged Dynamics NAV, Dynamics GP, and Dynamics 365 under the Microsoft Biz App. So they used to be separate groups or, channels of, MVPs that had a very clear distinction
Category,
under
like
Microsoft.
category.
Yeah, categories under Biz Apps. They're now merged, and a new one has come out, a new category, which is Power Virtual Agents.
I just don't get a category around a feature.
Yeah.
I mean, I see PowerApps as a platform. I see Power BI as a platform. I see Power Automate as a platform. Obviously, Dynamics 365. I don't see Power Virtual Agents as a platform. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Obviously, Microsoft's wanting to drive some interest to that. And this is one of the levers they have to do it, is let's create some MVPs around it. But to me, it just doesn't seem to have a broad enough footprint to justify being a category. But anybody who wants to be an MVP, go spend 2 weeks and you'll probably be an expert in everything you could possibly know about Power Virtual Agent and start writing about it, because clearly it looks like they're looking to add some. Now, remember this happened with Flow. When they first launched Flow, suddenly we had these MVPs pop up and they came in this category called Flow. We're like, Flow, what the fuck? How do you get in the door through that? It's just like a feature. So this is the same kind of path that some of those people got in, from Flow, and not disparaging them at all, but Flow is a piece of a very large puzzle that we had all been working to become MVPs by understanding the whole puzzle, and then coming to realize, you can become an MVP just by paying attention to one little piece.
Yeah.
That's interesting news. So PVA, yeah, Power Virtual Agent. Go read up on it, start writing about it, and you'll be an MVP in about an hour.
A lot of the recent MVPs have definitely been people that have doubled down on a single area, right? Yeah. And become hyper focused on a single area. And as you say, PVA's a one wide open for anybody to do. I remember Jerry Weinstock, another MVP out there, saying that, if you can get on the front foot of a Microsoft releasing a new technology and learn everything you can about it and just blog about everything you're learning, then you'll quickly come to find the differential about kind of like what your expectation is and what it is. So then you can blog about all the, I thought it could do this, I thought it could do that. Then the product team is starting to talk to you specifically, because now you're becoming a thought leader because you put a bit of brain time into it. Yeah. And then you can start bringing out what are the gaps, what needs to be built, and so you've got a beautiful cycle just by staying on one topic to create a nice themed engagement over a long period of time.
Jerry is a textbook example of that strategy, because he's been in the channel forever. He's
over 10 years now, as far as I know. 10, 12 years. He's
been an ISV, he's been an SI, he's done all that stuff. But then when Flow came out, for some reason or other, he gravitated towards it. And I think, as you said, he saw an opportunity, to just become an expert.
His internet connection's obviously become a little unstable again. Man, I'm surprised. I'd thought in America,
it's my building.
Unstable. I'm not sure here. Let's just see. I can see we've got a bit of a swirl. Your internet, my internet's unstable. Are you back with me?
Yeah, I think you're the one that froze.
Yeah. Well, this is hotel internet there. Sorry, but I see we're back on. Yeah. What were you saying?
The quality of my internet here seems to be about hotel quality as well.
What were you saying about?
Just
I'm definitely unstable, Ken.
I mean, I think there's an opportunity today for somebody to do the exact same thing Jerry did. I don't know that PBA has the legs that Flow ultimately had, but I don't know. But to go and become one of the early people who understands it and is writing about it and to however many people are going to be looking for that information. You're going to be one of the few sources of that information. You know, you and I are both aware that through the back channels that Jerry has the ear of, you know, Steven Siciliano, who owns all of that Power
Yeah.
Automate, and you know, almost like a one-on-one dialogue he's gotten to the level of about the product and things to do and stuff like that. And he did all that, like you say, by jumping in with both feet and decided, I'm going to plant a flag on this.
Yep.
And become an expert on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. All righty. What else have you got on your list of things to discuss? Is there anything we haven't discussed from the audience there? Yeah, I see the dates came out around when TV came about, based on that conversation. I don't know who this Tobias guy is, Seth. Don't know.
I don't either.
Have you got a link to him? Not sure who that is, but yeah, feel free to send us through if there's any topics you do want us to cover. I think it's interesting in this new financial year we're going into, and what I'm seeing in our country is that we've been able to stop COVID here out in public. We've got it in quarantine facilities, but nothing in public. And so our biggest input is coming, is coming via people coming into quarantine facilities from overseas. We're getting around 3,000 people that have got the right to live in New Zealand flying in a week. And what it's doing is blowing our quarantine facilities, or that's overloading them, right? And so our government made an unusual announcement yesterday that it's not allowing any new flights into the country for the next 3 weeks, or sorry, not allowing flights. They're not allowing people to book tickets to come and move back to New Zealand, even citizens, just to try and manage the flow of people, because it's been seen as a lottery ticket if you have the right to live in New Zealand, because, you know, the virus is under control here.
Well, clearly the way we're handling it here in the US is we're all acting like it's already gone, and it's not here anymore. The virus has gone away.
Yeah.
And going about our business as though it never was here. And that's why it's spiking all over the place again.
Yeah. I see in Melbourne.
We're all banging our fists saying, you know, I can do whatever I want. It's a free country. We're all banging our free country fists and going out and making everybody sick.
I see in Australia they've had a big resurgence of it in Melbourne. Actually, one thing I was wanting to discuss is that, you know, Dynamic Community of DCI last week ran their conference. I was originally going to be speaking in Barcelona at this event, but being on the time shift, it wasn't possible for me to speak at it. But, you know, some people in our guests on the show have sent through emails through the week where people are asking for refunds from the event. So I'm not sure how it went. I haven't spoken to anybody that either presented and or participated, but I'm not sure how that event ran last week. I don't know. Have you had any feedback?
It was, I haven't, but I know that leading up to that event, at least within the MVP community, which of course is a key speaker group for the UG Summit, there seemed to be some mixed camps on whether they should participate or not. A lot of the MVPs were frankly not happy with UG for quite a while because they felt like, you know, they were making money off their speaking without compensating them and stuff like that. That just kind of then rolled into this live concert turned into virtual and no refunds. And I think there were a lot of MVPs planting a flag that, well, I'm not going to support an organization that operates like that. Other ones that are saying, hey, it's a business, they're doing what they got to do. So I think that it's interesting that, and I was kind of trying to decide which side of the fence I was going to land on that myself, because I was coming up for something to talk about there, just as you were. And then actually, fortunately for me, or unfortunately, I did have something pop up where I was not able to do it. So I didn't have to make the choice of whether I was going to do it or not do it on moral grounds.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it anyway, but definitely has been a hot topic. So I would think if you and I couldn't make it physically for other reasons, and then you add to that a bunch of other folks that couldn't make it because of moral reasons in their own mind, that event might have could very well have gotten kind of gutted. So that there's rumors about people demanding refunds. I mean, as you said, you were still on the calendar, even
Well,
after telling me
someone said I was still listed as a speaker, and I mean, I sent 3 explicit emails to various people that kept asking and said, "Listen, I'm out of action. Like I can't do it. I've got other commitments at this time of the year."
So
That doesn't allow
imagine
me.
somebody signing up for 2 or 3 sessions only to find that speaker isn't there
Yeah,
at all. I mean, yeah, I can see them getting upset and say, "Hey, I want my money back." You know,
yeah.
I'm logging into empty rooms.
What I have noticed as well over the last couple of months is the plethora of new virtual events that have come out that are
I'm amazed that
hyper focused, you know, like whether it's an AI specific event or an AI and manufacturing event. I think the opportunity to get to be a speaker in the comfort of your own home, get your presentation down, nail it is like never before. I mean, everybody that does these events puts a call for speakers, right? And the opportunity is massive now to speak.
I would think. I mean, I'm still amazed at your accurate use of the term plethora, but but yes, you know, you got to figure all these events have gone virtual, and what
Yeah,
does that do? It frankly does the same thing that it does for employers with employees that go virtual. It means you're no longer limited geographically.
yeah,
So you get a lot of these events. I mean, they're not going to be flying people in from the other side of the world to come speak at their event of all these different sizes. They're looking for the best speakers they can find within driving distance.
yeah, yeah,
Well, same thing with employers. They're looking for people, the best people they can hire within driving distance of the office. Well, now in virtual, all bets are off. I mean, they can go out and find the best speaker on their subject, on their issue in the world if they want. You
yeah,
know, I mean, there's no reason not to. So it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves.
yeah. I was out to dinner last night with people in the tech industry. You know, being in Auckland, it gives you a good opportunity to set up all these meetings and evening dinners and whatnot with friends. And you know, and one of the discussions that came up was around, you know, 37 Signals or Basecamp and their book on remote, which is around remote work. And these guys, you know, built $1 billion business with, I think, 9 employees that were all pretty much on different continents around the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And have been running remote for 10 years. And, you know, the discussion turned to what does the new world look like? And, you know, one of our biggest tech companies in New Zealand is a company called Xero, online accounting, that they're growing all over the world, stock listed company, done very well in accounting software. And you know, their head of talent said the other day in a public statement, they are now no longer requiring any new hires to be physically located to their businesses.
Yeah.
And they said what it's done is allowed us to go out globally and get the best cream of the crop when it comes to talent to work for our company because we've moved that whole barrier of physical location
Yeah.
to get the best skills. So she said it's going to blow apart our ability to attract top talent, get top talent, because we no longer require them. They can live wherever they want in the world, enjoy their
Yeah.
lifestyle, but work for us.
I mean, there's 2 sides to that coin. I mean, if you're a highly skilled, knowledgeable person that happened to live in Podunk, you probably had to settle for a job that was less than what you were able to get, and now you could get a better job by, you know, getting hired by someone who could afford to justify your, you know, your value that you couldn't find local. And then the local company, of course, now has the whole world to choose from. But what that's going to mean now is the local company who say needed 20 people and pick the best 20 from a driving distance, they were settling.
Yeah.
You know, the whole time they were settling for the best they could find in that. Without that barrier, they're going to be competing, and now every company is going to be competing. So if you don't have skills, you know, you're fucked, because those are the ones that are going to get hurt, or people that don't have skills that are wanted, because you're not just going to fill a chair because you're in driving distance anymore. You
Yeah.
know, they could hire somebody, you know, in a third world country for less than they're paying you for no skill. If you don't have any skill, you're not getting a job in you know, once this stuff moves.
So true. Well, we're at the top of the hour. We've had a lot
I'll
to
have to ask Ken about what policy he's referring to in the next show.
Yeah, sounds good. Anyhow.